Welcome to the second part of the IIIEE LAC presentations on environmental issues. The topic of this presentation will introduce the meat industry and its impact on the environment. This presentation is brought to you by Environmental Management and Policy Master students at the International Institute for Industrial Environmental Economics in Lund, Sweden. The material is part of a project in learning, applying, and communicating. After the presentation, we kindly ask you to provide feedback about this project. The purpose of this series of presentations is to illuminate some of the environmental issues of today and to provide high school educators with interesting facts, ideas for discussions and activities, and inspirational material to use in their work. Now let's take a look at the meat industry and its effects on the environment. First, let's look at some background information to the environmental issues of meat production. The human being, of course, is an omnivore that can eat both meat and vegetables. In the last decades, however, human patterns of production of meat has changed rather drastically. Between 1995 and 2009, the global production of beef and pork has increased by more than 25%, from 124 to 157 metric tons. This increase in production has been matched by an equivalent increase in consumption. So why is this the case? One important explanation is that increased meat consumption has followed rising affluence in many parts of the world, especially in developing countries. As an example, China's level of meat consumption doubled between 1990 and 2002. With increased levels of production, industrial meat production and the livestock sector have become top contributors to the most serious environmental problems, such as greenhouse gas emissions, decreasing biodiversity, increasing air and water pollution, land degradation, and so on. In this presentation, we will look more closely into a few of these issues. Meat and dairy products account for approximately 1/3 of human protein intake globally. Naturally, this figure will vary depending on what country or region you are looking at. The livestock sector accounts for more than 40% of total agricultural production, and an estimated 1.3 billion people make all or some of their living from activities in the livestock sector. Global production of meat was around 200 million tons by the turn of the century and is projected to more than double to 400 or 500 million tons by the year 2050. This tremendous increase will stress the affected ecosystems even further and also increase global impact on the environment. The problems with meat production and the livestock sector activities are not limited to the impact on the environment. There is another, perhaps more philosophical side to the issue. The debate of animal welfare and animal protection rights has been going on for more than a century and has taken off in the last few decades. Peter Singer, quoted on this slide, is one of the world's best-known proponents of animal welfare. The livestock sector accounts for 18% of all greenhouse gas emissions globally. This is more than the entire transport sector. How is that possible? First, carbon dioxide is emitted when land use changes, specifically when areas are deforested to create more pasture for livestock. Secondly, the animals themselves release a substantial amount of methane, which has 23 times higher global warming potential than CO2. Thirdly, handling of manure releases nitrous oxide, which has 296 times higher global warming potential than CO2. The potential of reducing this level of emissions is enormous, but requires firm action from markets and governments. However, the trend within this area is increased productivity and intensification within livestock production and feed crop agriculture. Livestock production is undergoing a constant geographical shift. The economic drive for this shift is to get closer to the consumer and to the distribution hubs of livestock feed. This means that livestock production is moving closer to urban areas, where distribution of products is easier and procurement of feed crop is more readily accessible. Since land is more scarce in urban areas, this development also drives the intensification and industrialization of livestock production as more animals have to squeeze into less space. Even so, livestock occupies almost 30% of Earth's land surface, mostly as pastures and lands for grazing, and the share is growing. In all, livestock production accounts for more than 70% of all land involved in agricultural activities. Freeing up some of this land for other types of agriculture would increase total food production and help satisfy the global need for food in the foreseeable future without the need for further deforestation. Land degradation due to livestock production has been estimated at around 20%. Degradation is mainly caused by overgrazing, compacting, and erosion. Annual feed crop production for livestock is around 750 million tons. This grain could easily feed the 1 billion people that are undernourished. Livestock require space in terms of land, and this need often conflicts with the needs of space for wildlife in protected areas. World Wildlife Fund has identified 825 terrestrial ecoregions, and the biodiversity of almost 40% of these are threatened by livestock production, mainly through deforestation and land degradation. Also, within the industry itself, the trend is to go for less biodiversity. Species and breeds with high economic yield are preferred, as are monogastric animals like pigs and poultry. The livestock sector accounts for 8% of global human water use. Most of this water is used for irrigation of feed crops. Thus, the converted water cost of 1 kilogram of beef is 15,500 liters. The industry also accounts for a substantial part of the world's water pollution in the form of animal waste, hormones, chemicals, fertilizers, antibiotics, and pesticides. If the correct economic incentives are in place, reducing the negative impact of livestock production on fresh water use and pollution is technically easy. The techniques involved, like more efficient irrigation and water cleaning, are well known and readily available. Many companies involved in meat production and livestock activities have acknowledged the need to take environmental and animal welfare issues into serious consideration. This slide shows an example of this trend, a statement regarding an internal program called Values in Action, taken from the McDonald's website. By 2050, livestock production is expected to double from today's levels. Most of the growth will take place in developing countries. History has proven that increased levels of income also increase demand for livestock products, whereas globalization helps in promoting trade with these products. The challenge that lies before us is to find new and sustainable ways of producing, packaging, transporting, distributing, and consuming livestock products. Much of the answer to the environmental problems caused by meat production lies within the areas of intensification and increased productivity. But what does this mean? In economic terms, this means that more output, like milk and meat, must be produced with the same or less input, such as water, feedstuff, energy, and production facilities. The challenge here is to find ways of doing this without compromising with the animal's life quality and needs. This is where legislation on animal welfare plays an important role, and also consumers' own awareness about these issues. In conclusion, the key to managing future developments in meat production lies within the areas of effective legislation, changing consumers' behavior, and technical developments. There are several suggested activities that can be done to demonstrate and reinforce the information in this presentation. These can be done in a teaching group, but also in the classroom. More resources for additional activities have been collected for your convenience on the next slide. On this page are suggested teaching resources to implement ideas from this presentation into the classroom. They are not comprehensive but represent high-quality resources that we feel can be readily and easily implemented to save you time in planning a lesson or unit incorporating this topic. For more comprehensive information about the ideas presented in this topic, please look through our sources of inspiration. The full list of websites can be retrieved from the presenter's notes, available for download in PDF format. Thanks for watching this presentation. We hope that you have found it inspirational and helpful. You can help us out by spending a minute on our online survey. There you can also get in contact with us if you have any questions or comments.